today.
So we will invite a panel of guests who have deep connections to Kojima Productions. So first, I would like to introduce the moderator for this special panel, creator and producer of the Game Awards and host of Summer Games Fest, Geoff Keighley. So I will hand over to Geoff to moderate this panel.
Thank you so much. Great to see you. Hello, everyone. Mr. Kojima, congratulations on 10 years. We're so proud of you. And great announcements today for OD, Physent, and so many other things. But this is something that's going to be really special. As Hideo said, we're going to look far into the future of how games and entertainment are going to converge in an even bigger way, and I know that's part of your vision, Hideo, and we have some very special guests with us, some surprise guests. They're going to join us on stage. Mr. Kojima, before we begin, any thoughts as we lead into this special panel?
Well, we're going to call all these legends that we're going to have all these people up on stage, but, you know, I have to talk about my future, but I want to listen to their future, and hopefully we could connect the next 10, 20 years in the entertainment world. So I want everyone to think at the same time, too.
Exactly. This is really a panel about vision of where entertainment's going to go, and I think it's going to be really fascinating. So should we welcome our special guest now, Mr. Kojima? Yeah. Okay, great. All right, well, our first special guest is someone who you know from Death Stranding. He's Tarman, but he's also the director of the legendary Mad Max series. It is such an honor to have him with us live here in person. Please welcome the great George Miller. Great to see you, George. But that's not all. Next, please welcome the world-renowned Oscar-winning filmmaker who also appeared in Death Stranding as Deadman, Guillermo del Toro, everyone. And finally, the legendary figure of Japanese animation who has also appeared in Death Stranding. You know him as the pizza chef in Death Stranding 2, Mamoru Oshii-san. Thank you all for joining us. Please have a seat. Well, this is once in a lifetime to have all you guys here for Hideo's anniversary, of course, but also the theme of this panel is the future of entertainment, visions from legends. So first of all, I wanted to ask all you guys, what did you think of Hideo's announcements? We got a credit card, we got sake, we got games, a little bit of everything. What are your thoughts? Starting with you, George. What did you think of his announcements?
Well, first of all, it didn't stop.
Exactly.
It goes on and on. It's like a massive feast for somebody who, like everyone around, is into consuming this stories, particularly coming from you. It just goes on and on. It's even got sake, and it's just wonderful to look ahead to it and to see where it's going. There's so many dimensions to it. That's what's so fascinating to me.
Guillermo, what are your thoughts?
I was hoping for a diet pill, but he didn't do one. But, you know, I'm very excited about OD now because I know how good he is at scaring. You know, we Ito Junji, and him and I had a couple of sessions for a game I will not mention, but he's so good at horror, and I think he's a master at it. So I'm expecting much fear to come on my way.
It looks incredible. Oshii-san, what are your thoughts on Mr. Kojima's announcements? Got animation coming too, right?
Yeah, I was surprised about the animation. I wasn't sure you were working on it. I didn't know you were working on so many different projects. I wonder if it's good for you, actually. For me, I think you work 10 times more than I do. And you are reaching so far and so wide, and I'm a bit worried. Personally, my wish is for Kojima-san to work on something alone, something that is truly by Hideo Kojima. Maybe you can write a novel. Maybe that's something you can think about. In any case, you're making sake. That was a surprise. For me, I only work maybe 3 hours per day. I spend the rest of the day just playing Kojima-san's games. I don't know, what should I say? What else I can say? I was surprised you were working on so many different projects. We are working in the same industry, but what a difference. I'm 10 years or so older, but when we think about 10 years from now, it will be a quite tough discussion.
Well, I know, Hideo, you're restless about sort of where the industry is going, and I know you have so many ideas in your head. And we want to talk maybe about this next phase of entertainment, and all you guys, I think, have thoughts about this, right?
Well, entertainment is in the brink of time where it could change with quantum computers, AI, and streaming services. So the next 5-10 years, the creators need to change because the technology changes, the environment changes, the audience would change. So what can we make in that era is the key question here.
Wow. Well, that's a big question to unpack, but let me start with you, Hideo. The question to all of you, what do you think is going to be the sort of the biggest radical shift in how we experience stories in the next decade? I know, Hideo, you've seen this kind of, merging of cinema and games, and a lot of the technology is, the same technology that's being used to build these things. How is that going to change how we experience entertainment? Not, in 2026, but 10 years from now.
Well, movies, novels, games, the current ones would remain. Even the films in theaters would remain. But it's now all digital. Movies, music, even books, and also streaming. And you'll have everything in digital. So the audience could have just one platform, like an iPad or a smartphone, and you could retrieve any kind of entertainment. Everything was all apart before, like novels were paper on books, films and movie, but this will be all merged kind of together, not as one, but it will create more new things like movie and games in between something medium, or novel and movie in between medium. Something that we never seen before will probably be born. And also AI comes in, and all, Hollywood movies and our games, the cost was so high, but with AI, it'll be more, low cost and budget. So you could now create with small teams or even alone using those technologies. So it won't be like, a gigantic team will be needed for anything. It'll be much more speedy with smaller teams.
George, any predictions from your front of what excites you or what you think is going to radically change?
Well, the only thing I can say is without question, there is change, and it's happening more rapidly than we've ever seen before. And that's basically the evolution of technology from the very beginning of who we are as human beings. Like a lot of people, I've been really interested in AI, not only how it affects what we do in storytelling, but in medicine. I've gone back to the medical school where I went to see how it's affecting that, and at the world at large. And in every one of those arenas, the thing I hear most is that what may have taken a year or 2 years now it's shifting so quickly, might be just a week or 2 weeks. So it's a fantastic and scary ride. In all those arenas too, people are talking about the ethics of it, which is really good. And that's always been the story of technology and art and human endeavor, going way back. I remember so there's a kind of dichotomy to it. Even though the technology is changing, there's some things that are always constant, and that is the fundamentals of storytelling. Without going on too long, the one thing that's unique about Australia, where I come from, is that there is a culture that's a surviving culture that's at least 65,000 years old in the Indigenous Australians. And with nothing else there, because Australia is essentially an arid desert, they basically navigated the world, everything in the universe, through story. And I realize that's what's happening across all time and space. However deep in the future, whatever future we have, we'll still go through that process. The technology will change. Mm-hmm. For me, I've enjoyed the ride always. I'm amazed how every one of the films I've made has been influenced by the tools at hand at any moment. So it's exciting. It's also a bit scary, but it's wonderful.
Yeah. Guillermo, building on that idea, story is at the core, of course, of everything. But is the audience do you think they will experience stories in radical new ways, or will it still be very true to the way we know it today?
I don't know. I think that every time there's a technological change, it takes a minute for humans to find their spirit back in the art. I think that when photography came and overtook the need for realism in painting, academic realism, it took a little bit for us to experience then symbolism, impressionism, and things that were searching for something else rather than surrendering to photography. I think that, I'm 60, so I'm starting to get a little alarmed, but it's what happens when you're 60. You have prostate exams and you get alarmed. But I think that we have to find the human spirit in what is coming. I don't think it's enough to have speed and delivery and comfort. When you're talking about storytelling, it's about depth, it's about connection, and I'm not skeptic. I think we may find it, but the future that I look forward to is when technology, which is a thing of its own, it dictates and is a bit of a tyrannical move forward, is what we experience. No one knew that the biggest change in architecture in all of the world would come from a car, but all our cities transformed from that car. So in my opinion, what we are experiencing, which is wild, crazy, in many ways motivated by industrial and stock desires, by big companies, that we can find the human spirit on that. And to me, what I'm looking forward in 10 years is sort of finding a way to get the emotion into that. There's a very significant pact we have as humans with image. And I think a lot of that pact depends on us believing there is something, someone sacrificed or someone suffered for that image behind of that. It's not enough to generate facsimiles of images. I'm really concerned if we are still going to connect. That's the only thing that we need to take care of, connecting, because that's the function of art is not just to render, and it's not just to make feasible, is to actually express and connect. And that's why I was very moved by this Stranding when I first played it. First of all, I saw that I got into the shower with Norman Reedus and was slightly alarmed. But second, I was incredibly moved by what it was seeking, which was connection and frailty. And I love when that happens, especially with Hideo, when things that are highly evolved are seeking the basic emotion. So my hope for the future is a bit of the past.
Yes. So true. Oshii-san, you've heard thoughts from Hideo, George, and Guillermo. Anything to add on there about how you think, the stories will evolve in the next decade?
Well, with all these technological changes, it is true, as an animated film director, I've been working in the industry for over 50 years, but what's happening over the past 5-6 years is comparable to what has happened over the past 5 decades. We are seeing rapid change, drastic change, even hand-drawn titles. We take motions, and also AI is being introduced into the field. We are using AI as tools. So the animation, the creation process has already undergone significant change. And every time we do or we work on a project, everything changes. So if we are working on a title every 3 years, by the time we are finished, everything has changed. All the technology behind has changed. We need to start anew. When it comes to story, for me, essentially, I think from long ago, stories have not changed much. As humans remain human, I think stories will remain unchanged. But the characters that express the stories where I want to pay attention to, of course, the characters fitting for the given time, characters that have that foreshadow the times to come. So I think those are the characters that I need to focus on and shed light on. The story itself, it can be anything. It doesn't matter what the story is. Even a classical story, it's completely fine. But to act the story out, the characters that appear in the story are important. Especially for me, what I do is animation. So the theme, perhaps for my industry, is slightly different from the film industry, because we don't rely on actors. We need to rely on ourselves and what goes on in our own minds, and try to create that into animations. So that's an advantage as well as a challenge for us. For technology and how it affects storytelling, since changes are occurring rapidly, even if we go against the changes, we cannot. We are washed away. And when you try to ride this tide, it's also difficult. But maybe another option is to ignore all those changes happening. Perhaps that's one option for us as human beings. And for people who do not have a real existence, maybe like cyborgs and clones, I'm attracted to these beings. So that's maybe where I'm coming from. But maybe we need to be more aware that we have become these beings in a sense. Everyone here, I've been saying this for over 10 years, we've become more like cyborgs. Everyone is like a cyborg. Everything's connected. We are all connected to something else, and acquiring freedom is going to be more difficult in the future. So maybe we need to think about what to do in that state. So that's something I've been thinking about lately.
Wow. Great insight. And you talked about sort of the positive aspects of this, but also some of the fears, right, of keeping it human, keeping the connection. We always talk vision panels about the great things, but I'm curious, for each of you, what do you think is the darkest possibility you see, and what would you do to prevent it? The fear that that all this technology, what could it lead to that would be not good, and how do you think we can prevent it? Starting with you, Hideo.
Dark? Okay. Well, just as Mr. Oshii said, stories haven't changed from long time ago. The mythology, Japanese folklores, Asian folk tales are quite the same. But I don't see anything from there. It's like the person who tells the story is very important, the storytellers. So these people have changed over the eras. So even if it's the same story, it changes according to the storyteller. I mean, like people who told that story 500 years ago, 100 years ago, today, they live in a different environment and technology. So how that storyteller tells the story will, of course, change. The meaning, the root of the story will never change, but how the details and how it's told is really reliant on their background. Like, for instance, these days, everyone has a smartphone and everyone is a storyteller, and everyone can just choose what they want to tell. So you have to look at, as a human being, how do you tell the basic instincts of the human is also the key.
And I imagine with that, you said there's so many stories that can be made so quickly, so rapidly. We talk about, AI, how quickly things can be generated and whatnot. Is that a dark possibility, George, that there's sort of too many stories, or we're over, like how does something really matter, right, when there's so much content out there?
Well, it's the paradox or the contradictions. There is no question, first of all, that we are hardwired for story. It's part of, I think it's pre-human. If you look at the instinctual behavior of animals, there is a narrative. But for humans, where there's no question, it's an essential part of how we try to understand the world. Now, with the technology making it available to everybody, the real question is which of the stories which are kind of going to get traction, even if it's within a small group. I mean, one of the great dangers of modern technology and the dissemination of story, it's all narrative, is that, as we know, bubbles are created. And people invest deeply into those belief systems. And hence we get cults and of all kinds, religious cults, political cults, and so on. That narrative we see played out across time, and it's accelerating. So it comes down to, I'm already hearing it, I'm picking up the term AI slop. Yep. There's so much out there, and people aren't necessarily consuming it, just a small group of friends. What are the stories that have the comprehensive strengths that work intensely on the human being, as you were saying, and what are the platforms through which they're going to be experienced? It's impossible to tell. It's with it seems to be the case with all technology. Nobody imagined that the internet, when they first worked on it, as a way, as a counter to nuclear, the first web was a military exercise. Nobody imagined that we would be doing that today. With the telephone, Alexander Graham Bell was basically trying to figure out how to help people who were deaf. Had no idea that it would become that thing by which we could call each other. So there's no predicting. One of my favorite sayings is from John Lennon: "Life is what happens when you're making other plans." And I think that's been our story. We have no real sense of it, but we must attempt to predict. Otherwise, it'll become chaotic and bewildering, and people will shrivel in their spirit. On the other hand, there is an excitement to it, because I've heard so many filmmakers say, I've been trying to get this story, I'm desperate about this story, but the budget's too high, I've been through all the studios, I can't get the money, too expensive, And now I can do it because it doesn't cost much. That's wonderful. I know 4-year-old kids who are asking their mothers to take their dinosaurs and do close-ups and wide shots and cut it together. Yeah. They're already starting at 4. And I know a girl, a little girl, she's 6 years old, who's the daughter of a friend of mine, who's already creating content on YouTube and getting the feedback of response and honing her skills as to how to tell a compelling story. So it's available to everybody. And that's a really healthy thing, because bottom line, Guillermo, it's really the human. What was the term you recover? Okay. The human expression, the human, the humanity, and that's the case. That's always been the case across all time. That's the extraordinary contradiction here. And I'm just, without going on too long, I have spent most of my adult, even from childhood, trying to understand, most of my adult life, trying to understand how to tell stories. And then when I became a storyteller, it became not only how do I tell stories, but why do I tell stories? And I think that question will still stay with us. Why do we tell stories? How is changing, but the essence of it, I think, will always be there until some of our stories get so chaotic and wild that we kind of destroy ourselves. I mean, there are those two paths. Yeah.
Guillermo, is there, we talk about all this content that we made and, the idea of humanity and great stories. There's also the risk that there's so much derivative content out there, the true original ideas. You think they can still sort of sail through and can still prosper?
Well, there's a thing, Theodore Sturgeon, he created a law that says 90% of everything is shit. Right. And to that I countered the Guillermo del Toro law, which is 10% of everything is awesome. Yes. I really like it. And that is on anything, cars, clothing, entertainment, whatever you want. I think that the interesting thing is to take a stance on what we do. I mean, we talk about stories being told at a rapid pace all the time. I think that we have thresholds that we have crossed that we didn't see crossing, meaning whatever is the darkest and the lightest, they say nothing is forever, nothing will end, nothing will start. You only believe that when you're very young or very old, that things are eternal. So we're part of a wheel and we're turning. We cross thresholds that are really hard to see. I think COVID was a threshold, immense threshold that we all went through. The fact that we are, whether we like it or not, already into transhumanism. We rely a good chunk of our psyche to a machine that is always on our hand and is always talking to us, et cetera, et cetera. And the other fact is we are being told that we process information much more rapidly than before, but it's not information, it's emotion. We don't account it for what it is. We cannot go through 3 tragedies in 1 minute and then see a skateboarding squirrel in Central Park and then see a dog follow a car in a funny way. No, we can't. We can't, so we have to make the decisions. How much of that we let in a moment where we are talking about pipeline and content, which are basically sewage language or oil language or moving volumes, and not only what we let in, but how much what we do with what we put out. Meaning, all storytelling goes down to 2 stories: the ones that absolve you and blame others, or the ones that make you responsible and allow others to exist in a different way. That's it. There's no other 2 storytelling. And if our storytelling is just praising ourselves and absolving ourselves, and we need the constant feedback of that, then that's one future. The other one is very interesting. But I'm telling you, already, whoever is going to change this is already been born. It's either 5 years old, 3 years old, 10 years old, I don't know, but that person is already thinking about what to do with the world because we don't leave the world the way it is. We don't. Storytellers don't. We're not going to just take it. Somebody's already online to tell us all the old folks how to do this. And that is my biggest hope. I mean, to the darkest, there's a great line on No Country for Old Men. He says, what are you looking for? And he says, what's coming? And says, no one sees that. Yeah. And I think that's true. You can strategize against 20 things, and the human spirit will give you 3 more that you never thought about. So that's the darkest and the biggest hope I have.
And what I think is exciting is that, games, going back to that, sits at the core of some of this. Oshii-san, I wanted to get your thoughts on this, and also, do you you talked about playing Hideo's games, spending time playing games. Do you think, how do you think games fit into this sort of entertainment storytelling equation in the future?
Rather than focusing on entertainment, but playing together with the protagonist, the main character, or go on a trip in the game world to be excited, or to feel sad about, or to be moved. From that perspective, I think to focus on experiences in game. So I think we are now engrossed and swallowed by games. And films, you have 2 hours or so. It's become lengthy, but games, you will spend 200 hours or 1,000 hours. You can play the same game for a very long time. Well, from that perspective, to resonate with the contents in the entertainment. From that perspective, I think game will be swallowing films in the forward. It cannot compete with the games. And Kojima-san's game, I played, when I played Fando game, I felt that way. Films cannot compete with games. That's what I felt playing on Kojima-san's game in terms of storytelling, in terms of volume, the information, the characters. Well, I do not think films can compete with Kojima games. That's what I discussed with Kojima-san. But what we can do, that is something we need to think about. So I think that will be the themes that we need to think about. Well, we would be forced to be just one of the alternative options, or can we gain something new so that we can win new fans for the film industry? Or with regard to technology, well, the worst case, what would be the darkest possibility in the previous question? Well, one thing I have in mind, well, technology is not equally shared by everyone, depending on the region or nation. Based on this unit, there's a disparity of technology across the globe, and the technology disparity means there's disparity or gaps, narrowing, the widening gaps is due to the system, and also the generational gaps as well. Well, our job is to create something new for younger generation, but it has not been the case anymore. Well, not just younger generation, not just for children or kids, but for high school students, teenagers, or people in their 30s. Into these generations, as well as adults who know everything in the 30s or 40s, 50s, but it's totally different how we can approach to these tiers of audiences, and there will be technological gap between these tiers and generations. Well, I think that is, well, one possibility we need to keep in mind. Well, we together with a younger generation, youth, and we have some leeway to make use of technology, new technology, but on an individual basis, it will be more and more difficult. So that possibility would relate to the disparity in terms of technology that may widen the gaps. That is some vague feeling I have. And also, from the creator's perspective, to express something, well, how should I put this? Within something I create, the values, my values, or, well, my philosophies, if you will, that is something that, well, we are having difficulty trying to convey with the audience more and more. And as a result of that, our style, in terms of semiology or in terms of principles of how you can give reward to audience, From that perspective, trying to disseminate meme, that may be regarded as our job going forward. Well, I feel that way from Kojima-san. So Kojima-san, you're trying to, well, your worldviews and passions and values, that's something you're trying to convey through your title. But at the same time, Kojima, Hideo, your style of expression that's disseminated through the web, through the games, to the world. So Kojima-san's meme would be found across the globe going forward. But I think that's okay, that's fine. So originality may not be, of that importance. So I think that is something I think would occur in the future. And from that perspective, and from the perspective speed and in terms of market, the films have some difficulty. It may be swallowed up by games going forward. Of course, films would still exist. It's not gone. Together as with animation, it would be there. However, it may be some traditional artwork. It could be traditional artwork in some scenarios. And animation, anime tend to be regarded as a traditional artwork. So if we stick to that may be scenario we may find ourselves in. It's not a bad thing in itself. However, that may be likely to happen. Well, I think I'm talking about only neutral things, but I think, the future, there will be a lot of difficulty we need to get over. But at the same time, human beings, you need to live a finite life. So, three of us, we have difference in our ages by 10 years old or so. Well, I think it's time for us to gradually leave this world. I don't want this to sound rude, but, we have a limited amount of time, and what are we going to do in this time? I think that's what we need to revisit. And from that perspective, there may be some generational gaps because of the time available, and there would be the disparity in gaps between generations. But what we can do is try to convey something that may be different in the future, but trying to convey something. And in animation, it tends to create memes, and that would readily spread across the globe. So I think that is something we can find in the cultural world or in the world of expression. So that's how I feel.
Oshii-san, you mentioned the idea of, film being a finite, piece of content for a few hours, games, as you said, having, tens or hundreds or thousands of hours with them. I'm curious, George and Guillermo, when you look at, as you build universes moving forward, do you see, do you think of now of sort of like, here's the film expression, here's the series, here's the game? Do you think that's going to be something we're seeing more of, sort of this universal view of a story and how it can sort of live, on an ongoing basis?
Well, I think we see it already happening. We saw it today. You are working in several different platforms and different media, and that's legitimate. I keep on sort of finding refuge in what's constant. And is always there, that seems to be immutable as to who we are as humans. And I also find a great excitement as the tools develop. I think it's perfectly legitimate to play a game if it's on the level that you do, Kojima, is because it's all-encompassing. When I've been involved, as you know, I don't play the games. I watch other people play games. I've stopped playing games a long time ago. I've lost but my engagement, I never fail to be engaged in the way that we all do with stories. We apprehend stories at every level as a human being, viscerally, emotionally, intellectually, anthropologically, in terms of our spirituality and mythology. It's constant. Any story, a story that you hear from a neighbor your family, your favorite sporting team, and whatever. The ones that really stick are those that hit all those levels and have all those dimensions. And if it takes how long is it to play Death Stranding? How long?
It's long.
How many hours?
Yeah, you're spending 30 plus hours sometimes. Yeah.
So if it takes a game, you're lost in the life of that. Sure, you're not out in the street or in the wilderness playing the game, but your process is the same. And we've all heard stories of people who on chemotherapy. In fact, I have a niece who's going through very severe chemotherapy, and all she can do is play a game, and gives her the comprehensive experience of endeavor, of worry, of anxiety, of triumph, and all of that sitting because she can't move any other way. So that's a very legitimate use of storytelling. We can't. You're right. We can't be afraid because that's not who we are. It's a question of riding that wild beast that we're on, and some of us falling off and being crushed, and some of us managing to get through to, further down the track and passing it on somehow. That's my sentiment anyway.
Yeah, I think everybody has been looking for that Holy Grail, and I do believe it exists. And I do believe that you can permeate one platform through another, 100%. And some of it is already being enacted with partially controlling cinematic moments in a game and this and that. And many of these have been pioneered by Kojima-san and others. But I think what is beautiful is that we are seeking an experience, and nobody, I don't think even Kojima-san knew that for me, part of surviving COVID was Death Stranding. You never know where, you cannot just say this is good, this is bad. As you were talking about the chemotherapy, I think that there is an alternative way of thinking and experiencing that many people will find useful to push the storytelling to the next level. And it is coming. And I think somebody will crack that code and make it work. And I think it is imminent. I believe it is.
Wow. Well, it's been fascinating. We got through 2 out of about 20 questions I wanted to ask you guys. This is such fascinating conversation, but we do have to wrap it up. Let's give a big hand to our panel here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll stand. We're going to take a little photo here, right? Right. Exactly. Fantastic. Thank you so much. George Miller, Guillermo del Toro, Oshii-san. Thank you, Hideo. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.
So how was it? The legends, each word was so shocking. It probably struck a lot of people. And everyone has fears for technology, but we have to move on. So any era, if you have technology, you have the dream, you have the passion, which way, which path you want to go. So even the entertainment world, what's the center of the entertainment world will always be the story, and that will never change. So these days, you could be the storyteller. Sorry, for me, I misunderstood the question, but if all of the world is connected on internet and become a storyteller, there'll be still, even though we're connected, there are some places that are fighting and not really connected. So what should we do in the future? Should we change the way we live or the technology